In the land of maple syrup and majestic landscapes, a silent struggle brews. Think about a young family in Toronto, the parents juggling multiple jobs like circus performers, yet the bills still tower like skyscrapers. This isn't a scene from a Hollywood drama, it's the unbelievable reality of Canada's cost of living. While the world marvels at Canada's natural beauty, its citizens grapple with an unforgiving financial landscape. And as we delve deeper into this story, one question looms large: is Justin Trudeau steering the ship or merely watching it drift? According to a survey, a staggering 52% of Canadians found themselves teetering on the edge of financial insolvency with just a mere $200 buffer. And the situation is rapidly deteriorating. Rising household bills and food prices are squeezing wallets tighter than ever before. But it doesn't stop there. Canadians are also grappling with mounting debt costs, exasperated by soaring interest rates over the past year and a half. Perhaps the most alarming revelation from the survey is this: 35% of Canadian households are unable to cover their current bills. This marks the highest percentage ever recorded by the survey, a significant jump from 30% just 3 months earlier. Meanwhile, the Trudeau government boasts of Canada's economic prowess. According to Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, Canada's economy is cruising along smoothly, with a 5% wage growth outpacing inflation in July, maintaining a trend for the past 6 months. At a glance, the unemployment rate sits at a seemingly comfortable 5.5%, near historic lows, but scratch beneath the surface and a bleaker truth emerges. Freeland's rosy narrative conveniently ignores the grim reality facing Canadians. Prior to the pandemic, wages were actually lagging behind inflation, eroding purchasing power by as much as 8 to 10%. Moreover, Canada's purportedly low 5.5% unemployment rate is a deceptive figure. Economists at the Royal Bank of Canada point out that this rate has surged from 4.9% at the start of the year. Such a rapid increase historically signals recessionary pressures. In fact, since the 1970s, there have only been 6 instances where unemployment rose as swiftly, with 4 of those periods plunging the nation into recession. 8 years ago, this government rode into power on the pledge to uplift Canada's middle class. Chrystia Freeland even then acknowledged the downward pressure these economic forces exerted on middle-class wages, while the elite reaped the benefits. So, if Freeland could see the writing on the wall a decade ago, why is her government blind to it today? The answer is simple: politics. Upon taking office, the Liberals inherited a system in decline. Rather than addressing its root causes, they sought to exploit it for political gain. But now, as the system crumbles, Canadians bear the brunt of their inaction. The harsh truth is that Canada's economy has been stagnating for years. Productivity, the engine of wealth creation, has been stagnant for a decade. As any economist will attest, without productivity growth, true prosperity remains elusive. To make matters worse, in the era of low interest rates, Canada made a grave misstep. Instead of fostering real economic growth through innovation and investment, it embraced a perilous path of debt-fueled pseudo-prosperity. While other nations sought to innovate and diversify their economies, Canada poured its resources into the housing market, where prices soared to dizzying heights. Homeowners felt like lottery winners as their property values skyrocketed, but beneath this facade of wealth lay a dangerous truth. Many ordinary Canadians, seduced by the allure of quick gains, dove headfirst into real estate speculation, snapping up investment properties in hopes of riding the ever-rising tide of prices. Yet, in reality, they were simply burying themselves deeper in debt. While these transactions may have inflated GDP statistics, they did nothing to spur genuine productivity growth. There's nothing inherently productive about buying and selling the same house repeatedly for escalating prices. It's a house of cards built on the illusion of wealth. Now, as interest rates climb and the housing market's frenzy subsides, the cracks in Canada's economic facade are becoming glaringly apparent. Without the crutch of soaring home prices to prop up the illusion of prosperity, Canada finds itself standing on shaky ground. But it's not just households grappling with debt addiction, the government is culpable too. Under Justin Trudeau's leadership, deficits ballooned as spending on social programs reached unprecedented levels. Then, the COVID-19 pandemic struck, pushing Canada's debt spending into overdrive. Today, the federal government and provinces collectively owe a staggering $2.1 trillion, double the debt burden from just 15 years ago. As the dust settles and reality sets in, Canada must confront the consequences of its debt-fueled economic model. The aftermath of pandemic spending has unveiled a harsh reality economists had long warned about: a surge in inflation. Government debt spending during crises like the pandemic is inherently inflationary. By flooding the economy with funds, governments inadvertently boost total demand, driving prices upwards. Inflation, as many economists aptly describe it, is essentially a hidden tax, silently eroding the purchasing power of every dollar in your wallet. From the consumer's perspective, this devaluation hits hard. Food prices in Canada have been on a relentless upward trajectory, soaring above 8% for 2 consecutive years. Electricity costs have surged by 11% over the past year alone, while rent prices for available apartments have skyrocketed by a staggering 21% nationwide in the same period. And now, inflation is gathering pace once more. Despite a brief dip to 2.8% this summer, the overall inflation rate in Canada has spiked back up to a hefty 4.4%. What's particularly concerning is that food prices never even paused their ascent. Even as other sectors experienced brief reprieves, the cost of putting food on the table continued to climb. As the consequences of massive debt spending manifested in the form of inflation in 2022, the Bank of Canada stepped up to fulfill its mandate, controlling inflation. But it faces a daunting task: raising interest rates. However, this solution presents a double-edged sword. On one side, the government grapples with ballooning interest payments on its soaring debt. Meanwhile, households find themselves caught in the crossfire as their mortgage payments spiral out of control. With a staggering $2.9 trillion in debt, Canadians top the charts as the most indebted among all G7 nations. Much of this debt burden stems from mortgages, which have become synonymous with the Canadian dream of home ownership. Over the past decade, the average mortgage size in Canada has nearly doubled, fueling a surge in household debt. In just 5 years, the total amount owed in mortgages by Canadian households has skyrocketed by a whopping 50%. Now, as interest rates climb, mortgage payments have surged by 30% in just 1 year alone. This sudden spike hits hard, particularly for those who ventured into the investment property market, leveraging mortgages to fund their aspirations. As their mortgage payments soar, they pass on the burden to renters, driving up rental rates by a staggering 21% in the past year alone. The ripple effects of this debt-fueled frenzy are felt far and wide, stretching the financial resilience of households and exacerbating the affordability crisis across Canada. The discourse around Canada's economic woes often steers toward a contentious issue: immigration. Over the years, Canada has witnessed a significant uptick in immigration levels. What was once an annual quota of around 250,000 immigrants has now surged to unprecedented heights. Post-pandemic, the government raised its immigration targets yet again, aiming to welcome a staggering 400,000 newcomers annually by 2023, with projections reaching as high as 550,000 migrants per year by 2025. This influx isn't solely restricted to traditional immigration channels. Canada has also seen a surge in international students, with a record 550,000 welcomed in 2022, and projections hinting at a potential rise to 900,000 in 2023. However, this rapid demographic expansion comes with its own set of challenges. Canada struggles to keep pace with the demands placed on its infrastructure, housing, and economy. Despite a meager GDP growth of just 0.5% over the past year, the population has swelled by 3%, effectively translating to a per capita economic shrinkage of 2.5%. It's no surprise that many Canadians feel the pinch of what seems like a recession. The solution seems straightforward: reduce immigration levels and curb debt spending. Yet, the reality is far from simple. Immigration ministerial rhetoric touts international students as lucrative assets, prioritizing tuition fees over housing and livelihoods. As the nation grapples with mounting economic pressures, political tides shift. Recent polls suggest a growing Conservative lead, signalling discontent with the status quo. However, whether a Conservative government can navigate these challenges remains uncertain. As Canadians see their quality of life decline day by day, it's evident that change is needed. If you found this content helpful, please consider liking and subscribing, and check out our other videos. Thank you for watching.